Listen, Bonhart, or whatever your name is. Do not make me laugh. The Witcher was not brought up to heal. You cannot compare with him. You can only hunt puppies, only small dogs.
Look here, witch.
Such trinkets. You can buy any of them at a fair.
These are not from a fair.
Whatever you say.
It was once so that good people were afraid of witches more than monsters. Monsters, after all, sat in the woods and caves. However, witches had the nerve to walk the streets, enter taverns, and hover near shrines, temples, schools, and playgrounds. Decent people were offended, so they started looking for someone who could bring the insolent witches to order. They found someone. Not easily or soon, not even close. But they found someone. You see, I have killed 3. Not another mutant appeared in the area to upset the honest citizens. And if he appeared, I do to him what I did to the previous ones.
Bonhart, whispered by some to be the devil incarnate, was the epitome of death and torment. A man whose gaunt frame and lifeless fish-like eyes betrayed no hint of the humanity he had long since abandoned. Around his neck hung 3 Witcher medallions, a wolf, a cat, and a griffin. Trophies from those he claimed to have slain, each a testament to his unmatched skill with a sword. For Ciri, Bonhart was the embodiment of her darkest nightmares, dragging her into a world where survival meant shedding all of the innocence that she had left, and embracing the brutality he reveled in and lived for. Their harrowing tale would lead them both to the depths of their contempt, where in the end, Ciri would face the devil himself in a final confrontation, a battle that would forever leave a mark on her soul. Bonhart enters the story when he was hired by Stefan Skellen, also known as Tawny Owl, an officer in Nilfgaard's secret service, to capture and kill Ciri out of his own ambition. Skellen offered Bonhart 100 florins for the job, but not requiring proof of the kill, a testament to Bonhart's fearsome reputation. Bonhart accepted the task with a chilling smile and set out to track down Ciri and the rats, the gang she had joined after her trek across the Korath Desert. Ciri's involvement with the rats led her down a dark path, away from the teachings of the wolves at Kaer Morhen. This new life of violence and robbery cultivated a taste for brutality within her, and she began to embrace gratuitous violence as part of her identity. She adopted the nickname Falka, connected to a historical figure known for rebellion and destruction, foreshadowing her own destructive path. The rats' actions, particularly their ambush on the Baron of Cassadai's convoy, drew the Baron's attention. Enraged by their assault on his daughter, the Baron hired Bonhart to capture Ciri. Despite warnings of Bonhart's approach, the rats dismissed the threat. Confident in their abilities, they confronted Bonhart, severely underestimating his skill. Bonhart swiftly and systematically cut down the rats, leaving Ciri to arrive later and witness the gruesome aftermath. Ciri arrived to find Bonhart standing over Missile, Ciri's favorite of the gang, who was on the verge of death. Overcome with horror and despair, Ciri screamed as Missile was struck down and killed before her eyes. Driven by rage and grief, Ciri attacked Bonhart but was quickly overpowered. Bonhart brutally subdued her, forcing her to witness the decapitation of her fallen friends. He spared her life, recognizing her skill with a sword and twistedly enjoying the prospect of breaking her spirit further. Bonhart took Ciri to Claremont, where he kept her imprisoned in barbaric conditions. He regularly beat her and drugged her with Fiztek, leaving her physically weakened and mentally disoriented. He forced her to fight in the arena, where each victory felt like a defeat, as she was compelled to kill in order to stay alive. It was for these gladiatorial fights that Bonhart bought Ciri a mastercrafted gnomish sword that Ciri would name Zirel, or Swallow, a symbol of hope. However, Bonhart insisted she was not yet ready to wield it. At one point, as Bonhart had avoided turning Ciri into the Baron's seneschal, Windsor Imbra, and his men arrived at Claremont, demanding that Bonhart hand Ciri over. Bonhart refused, instead tossing Ciri the sword Zirel and commanding her to fight off her would-be captors. Despite her reluctance to continue killing, Ciri fought with desperation. Aware of the deadly skills she possessed, Imbra delivered a chilling warning, telling Ciri that Bonhart would eventually tire of her and send her to a brutal death in the arena. Overwhelmed by the horrors she had been forced to commit, Ciri considered suicide, holding the tip of Zirel to her chest, but she ultimately hesitated. Bonhart spoke out as the arena fell silent, antagonizing Ciri, claiming she didn't have the strength to do it, and alas, she did not. Bonhart eventually left Claremont with Ciri, journeying through the night and day without rest. They arrived at the village of Unicorn, where Bonhart met with Rience and Skellen to discuss Ciri's fate. Despite his agreement to deliver Ciri, Bonhart decided to keep her for his own purposes, intending to profit from her now that he knew who she really was. But in a twist of fate, a character by the name of Neriton, who initially appeared to be aligned with Bonhart, aided Ciri's escape by cutting her bonds and bringing her a horse to escape with. During the escape, Ciri was severely injured by Skellen, who threw a spiked throwing star, known as an Orion, that left a deep scar on her face that she still bears to this day. Despite the injury, Ciri managed to flee the village. After her escape, Ciri was found near death, but she was nursed back to health by Visigoda, a hermit living in the marshes. As she recovered, Ciri reflected on her past and prepared for the challenges ahead. However, Bonhart, Skellen, and Rience continued their pursuit, eventually catching up with her near Tor Zirel. Ciri used her ice skating skills that she learned in Skellige years back to navigate a fog-covered frozen lake, disorienting her pursuers and killing many of them. Rience met his end when Ciri severed his fingers as he was clinging to the edge of the ice, causing him to fall into the icy waters below. As Ciri made her way toward Tor Zirel, Bonhart relentlessly pursued her, but a strange phenomenon occurred near the tower, with thick fog and swirling winds suddenly surrounding the area. Bonhart, undeterred by the supernatural occurrences, continued his pursuit, but the situation escalated when the Wild Hunt appeared, their terrifying skeletal horses, red riders, and glowing eyes, filling the air with dread. But when the Wild Hunt appeared, they did not focus on Ciri. Instead, they protected her, the child of the elder blood that they were after, who used the moment to escape. With the help of the tower's portal, she teleported away, leaving Bonhart screaming in frustration. After the ordeal, Bonhart eventually arrived at Stygga Castle, where he taunted Yennefer by recounting the atrocities he had committed against Ciri. He vividly described how he had forced Ciri to fight in the arena, how he had beaten and tortured her, and how he had taken pleasure in turning her into a merciless killer. Yennefer, though horrified, challenged Bonhart, dismissing him as a mere brute who preyed on the weak. Surely, Geralt of Rivia was on his way to save Yennefer, and Geralt of Rivia is no ordinary witcher. Bonhart, in response, revealed 3 witcher medallions he kept as trophies: a wolf, a cat, and a griffin, those symbols of the most hardened warriors he had killed. After a long and frustrating journey through several worlds, Ciri eventually arrived at Stygga Castle, teleporting outside the gates, determined to find Yennefer. She unexpectedly encountered Bonhart yet again in the corridors. His presence was chilling, and he immediately grabbed her, lifting her off the floor with a menacing sneer, and says, "Hell must indeed be dreadful, if you have chosen me." Bonhart's hatred towards Ciri was on full display. She was the only one of his prey who had ever escaped him, and in effect threw his legendary reputation into question, filling him with a burning desire for revenge. The rogue mage Vilgefortz interrupted the encounter, commanding Bonhart to release Ciri. Vilgefortz reminded her that she could not teleport away due to the powerful magic protecting the castle. This magic ensured that Ciri was trapped, unable to use her abilities to flee as she had done in the past. Ciri offered her own life for Yennefer's freedom, but the suggestion was immediately dismissed by Vilgefortz. Feeling utterly defeated and trapped, Ciri's emotions reached a breaking point. Unable to see any way out, she let out an ear-piercing scream that reverberated throughout the castle. Just as Ciri finished expending all of her energy, the castle suddenly filled with cries of alarm. as Geralt of Rivia and his company arrived to rescue Ciri and Yennefer. Vilgefortz and Bonhart realized their stronghold was under attack and prepared to confront the intruders. Bonhart, confident in his abilities, was ready to add another wolf's head to his collection of trophies. As Ciri resisted the acolytes who tried to subdue her, a thick black smoke filled the room, creating confusion. Out of the smoke emerged Regis, a higher vampire in the form of a giant bat, an ally of Geralt. Regis swiftly killed the acolytes and urged Ciri to come with him, but Ciri, determined to find Yennefer, declined the offer. And so Ciri ran through the corridors of Stygga Castle, yelling Yennefer's name, inadvertently drawing Bonhart's attention. He emerged from the shadows, swiftly punching her in the face and pinning her against the wall. With a cruel sneer, Bonhart taunted her, revealing his twisted satisfaction in having her at his mercy once more. But he let her go, and he tossed the sword Zirel to her feet, challenging her to a fight. Ciri, paralyzed with fear, attempted to teleport away but only managed a short jump, landing her still within Bonhart's vicinity. Realizing she hadn't escaped, she turned and ran deeper into the castle, trying to evade him. However, she soon found herself confronted by a group of Skellen's mercenaries. Outnumbered, she was forced to retreat. But before she could be overwhelmed, a man from her nightmares showed himself yet again. The man from the slaughter of Sintra with the winged helmet. But this time, he was an ally. Cahir appeared and began to fight the mercenaries alongside her. Cahir, despite being greatly outmatched, resolved to stay and fight Bonhart, determined to protect Ciri at any cost. Tragically, despite his heroic bravery, Cahir was ultimately killed by Bonhart, and as Ciri fled with Angulemi, another of Geralt's company, she watched in horror as Bonhart coldly stepped over Cahir's body, taunting her with his obsession. As the wounded Angulemi died in Ciri's arms, Bonhart approached for one final confrontation. With no other choice, Ciri drew Zirel and prepared for the fight. They engaged in a fierce, desperate battle, with their swords clashing and reverberating in the wide corridor. Bonhart, still as skilled and ruthless as ever, drew first blood, cutting Ciri's arm and causing blood to run down her hand. Despite the pain and fear, Ciri continued to fight, retreating down the hallway until she found herself trapped with her back against the edge of a ruined tower, facing an abyss below where only the support structure remained. Seeing no other option, Ciri retreated onto the support beams, with Bonhart in his relentless pursuit. As the fight continued on the precarious beams, both Ciri and Bonhart struggled to maintain their balance while exchanging near deadly blows. Ciri's training at Kaer Morhen, particularly her practice on the pendulum, became crucial as she expertly navigated the beams, avoiding Bonhart's attacks in the process. She managed to slice Bonhart's chest, but despite the injury, he retaliated with a powerful strike that Ciri narrowly dodged, as she watched his blood drip into the abyss below. Ciri quickly understood that she couldn't afford a prolonged fight, as Bonhart began to recognize her fighting patterns. In a desperate move, she leaped from beam to beam, trying to gain an advantage. At one point, she jumped onto Bonhart's beam, and as he turned to strike her, he missed her by a hair, causing him to lose balance. This momentary lapse gave Ciri the opening she needed. She delivered a final, decisive blow, causing Bonhart to drop to one knee. The beam, now slippery with his blood, caused him to slip, and Bonhart fell into the abyss. Ciri watched as Bonhart hit the bottom of the pit, dust rising around him. She carefully descended and approached his body, crouching over him. In his final moments, Bonhart looked up at her and rasped, "You won. You won, Witcheress." It was a pity it was not in the arena. It would have been quite the spectacle. "I gave you that sword, remember?" Ciri, staring him dead in the eyes, coldly responded, "I remember everything." She then took the 3 Witcher medallions, the wolf, the cat, and the griffin, from his body, the trophies his now worthless reputation had hidden behind for so long. As she did so, Bonhart, all but begging for his life, insisted that Ciri was too noble to murder a beaten foe in cold blood. And he was right. But when Ciri turned her back to spare him, Bonhart, humiliated and enraged, sprang to his feet and tried to attack her from behind. At the last second, Ciri sensed his approach, dodged aside from his attack, and then with the very sword he had once given her, slashed his throat. With the liberated Witcher medallions in hand, she stood over him, coldly watching as the life drained from his body. Leo Bonhart would then bleed to death, slain by the Witcheress that he had beaten, tortured, and tormented for so long. The man who haunted her every step, the embodiment of all the cruelty and suffering she had endured, now lay defeated at her feet. The victory, though hard won, was not sweet. It was tainted by the deep scars he had left on her soul, scars that would never fully heal. In that moment, Ciri felt a complex mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that this monster was finally gone, but the sorrow, knowing that no amount of vengeance could ever erase the horrors she had witnessed and endured. Bonhart was more than just a man. He was a symbol of the darkest parts of the world she had been thrust into, a world where her innocence was completely stripped away, and survival meant becoming a hardened and unyielding warrior. Though she had vanquished the devil himself, the marks he left on her soul would be a permanent part of who she was, as much as she would try to forget these memories and let them fade into dust. As for now, the assault on Stygga Castle was not over. Skellen's men are still in the fight, and as Ciri eventually reunites with Geralt and Yennefer, of the liberated Witcher medallions, Ciri keeps the cat for herself and gives Geralt the wolf as they press forward. Ciri and Geralt of Rivia fought side by side, a Witcher and a Witcheress. The stairs became slippery from blood.
It was after her time training at Kaer Morhen. After the moment when Yennefer first called Ciri her daughter. We'd been separated. I knew she was in danger. I dreamt of her multiple times. I found her at Stygga Castle. She'd gone there to free Yen and gotten herself captured in the process. They wanted to hurt her. I remember fighting side by side with Ciri on stairs slippery from blood.
But in the back of her mind, the greatest lesson that the devil himself, Bonhart, would ever teach this scarred girl was this. Fear only goes as deep as the mind allows. Confront the evil that is on your doorstep, and face it like a wolf.